Greetings brothers, welcome to the weekly tactics video. This week we're looking at another tier list. I'm joined again by Tony and Mark, and we're going to be talking about heavy support. If you enjoy this type of content, then make sure to hit that like button. And if you're not yet subbed to the YouTube channel, then listen to me. If you are subbed, go grab a beer or a pizza, come right back. But if you're not subbed, look right into my eyes. Are you listening? Hit the subscribe button. The community is growing at a rapid rate, so hop on board. Alright man, we're literally defending the Imperium here. Well, we're not, but we hypothetically are. So, join the community, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Alright, good evening guys. Thanks again for joining us. I'm here with both Tony and Mark, and we're continuing our series where we're doing our tier list for every unit in the Blood Angels army. Tonight, we're starting on heavy support, and we're just going to get fired into it. There's 22 different units, so it's a lot to get into, and if you want to check out any of our previous tier lists, we'll link some of them up in the video description above. So, unit number 1 in heavy support then tonight is Centurion Devastators, and I don't know any Blood Angels player that plays Centurion Devastators, but why don't we start with you, Mark? What is your view on Centurion Devastators?
I really wanted to play them, but I wound up selling the ones that I bought to an Ultramarines player a few months ago, so that's probably a nice and easy one. They're really shooty, they're not very mobile, they can move without suffering any penalties to hit. The las cannon missile loadout is very punchy if you want to load a punch at range. The grav loadout it's good, but it suffers from the fact that you've only got one grav cannon rather than one on each hand, which is a little bit of a shame. Losing the grav stratagem from last edition is a problem. Heavy bolters, they hit hard, but we can get mobile heavy bolters somewhere else, so I'm not too sure really that they bring anything to the game that we couldn't already get elsewhere. If I was going to run these, I'd probably run these as las cannon missile launcher builds for some long range punch, and hope they don't get blocked out of line of sight by huge amounts of terrain, really.
Yeah, alright, and go for it, Tony. What do you think?
I want to like them, but I don't, to be honest. I think the grav cannon's a bit rubbish. It's 15 points. Damage 2 if they've got a 3+ save. All right,
it's a brilliant marine killer.
But is it even a marine killer? Because it's only strength 5, and now we've got a lot of gravis running around in that. You're only wounding on a 4. So you're going to wound on a 4. Gravis, yeah. You're hitting with 3 hits out of the 4. You're likely to get maybe 1 or 2 through and not kill anything.
Mm-hmm. There'll be 2 damage a hit.
Yeah, they're expensive. They're really expensive, I find. I think the Centurions...
Yeah, they're not for me, I don't think. That missile launcher looks quite nice for about... the fact it's got blast is actually a surprisingly good thing, because you've got that damage D3, you've got strength 8, so that's going to do some killing. It's got that 36-inch range as well. I think if I was going to run them, same, I'd probably go with the las cannon, but to be honest, I don't think I'd run them.
You don't want to run the las cannon because it's damage D6 anyway, and I'd rather
it's
got a plus or a fixed damage
20 points.
Per las cannon.
Points.
Yeah, so 110 points a model if you take with the 2 las cannons, which is nuts, absolutely nuts. 110 points for a toughness 5 model that doesn't survive, Yeah, okay.
Or either, so you can't give any buffs or rerolls.
Not anymore, no.
Yeah, which I don't see why. Centurions seem to be the one infantry unit that aren't core, but I guess that is just what it is. Yes, I think at 110 points, because I think you field them with las cannons or you field them with heavy bolters now, and I think 100 points for them with the heavy bolters, 110 with the las cannons. I just don't see how they're fieldable at all. They're way too expensive in my mind. I run assault Centurions, and they die. They're not that much stronger than aggressors, and they're more than double the points. Especially with the current meta with so many meltaguns. If these guys hit with meltaguns and they're saving on 6s, you can't save reliably against meltaguns, and pretty much every melta is going to arguably kill one. So
plus, you got to bear in mind what you're doing. Blood Angels, you're not hanging back and shooting. If you're hanging back and shooting, then why are you playing Blood Angels? Basically,
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I honestly think personally I put them in D because I think they're horrifically overcosted for Blood Angels. But then, other chapters with better shooting. I was going to say it's not really going to make a difference because last edition people used them around Guilliman, but because they're not core anymore, then that
can't even do that.
Yeah, so
I mean, if you're one of the chapters that gets a fancy assault doctrine, Devastator doctrine, then maybe they could be a little bit better. But even then, I'll be looking at it going, but it's 110 points. We're going to look at some tanks later that cost 110 points.
If you wanted to buff them with shooting, you could stick a chaplain next to them to.
Yeah.
I don't know if their buffs still do core only from the auras that they give from their prayers.
I'm sure you can figure something out, but really, is it worth it?
Nah, not really. I don't think they're useless. I don't think they're a trash fire, but I'm not taking them, so I put them in C. They're good at what they do.
What about you, Tony?
I just don't have a space for what they do.
For me, for Blood Angels, for other chapters is different, but for Blood Angels, right down there in dunce tier.
Yeah, and the chaplain buffs, I'm just looking at them here, they are now, you do now need to be core, so you can't even get chaplain buffs on them. Yeah, so they're a C or a D. I think they go... I'll break the deadlock here and put them in D, because 110 points per model, you're almost getting a Dreadnought for that. And a Dreadnought...
330 points for a minimum size unit.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's
absolutely. And if you want to play the mission these days in 9th Ed, you need to be moving forward. You need to be pushing and sitting on objectives. You can't afford to be stuck back and just sitting on stuff. Really, not moving.
Okay. So I think a D there.
Which brings us to Devastators.
Yeah, which brings us to Devastator Squads. But I mean, Devastator Squads can arrive in drop pods. So there is ways to make the Devastator Squads a bit more mobile than the Centurions. Let's talk Devastator Squads then. How do we feel about them? And do you want to open up on that, Mark?
Again, I like them in theory. I like the fact that they are relatively cheap. I like the fact that they got a highly customizable loadout. I like the fact that you can put them in a bunker if you want to bring 10 of them with missile launchers. You can put them in a tank, you put them in a drop pod if you want to put grav cannons on them. But equally so, I think that for the firepower that they bring, do we really want to use them? Missile launchers are flexible, but they're variable damage. Multi-melters. Okay, so we're going to fall afoul of that, reviewing things in a vacuum thing here that somebody called us out in the comments, which is fair, but we've got so much better multi-melter or melter options toward us that these guys fall afoul of having minus to shoot when they move and shoot.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. What about you, Tony?
I was looking at these earlier, trying to figure out my thoughts on it. I mean, they're still 18 points a model, which makes them quite cheap. They've got a lot of flexibility. The Armorium Cherub means that one of them can shoot twice. You've got
they are cool.
The skill in there that means one of them's hitting on 2 if you've got an expensive gun, but that really comes down to the crux of it. You can have a multi-melter for 20 points.
How many do you have 4 multi-melters and a Cherub?
Yeah, it's
how much is that?
It's a good question.
That's 85 points just for the guns and the Cherub. The other thing you can do that we often forget about is sticking combi weapon on the Sergeant. So if you did want to drop pod them in, you could put 4 multi-melters and a combi melter. And an Armorium Cherub in there.
So that'd be 10 multi-melter shots and your combi melter shot for less than 200 points. Plus a drop pod, which is another 80 or 90.
Once is the problem with that.
Yeah, and you got a -1 to hit, which can't be negated through the stratagem anymore, because they'll always count as moving if they come in from reserves.
The only one I think that I liked from the drop pod was the Heavy Flamer, because that's a Blood Angel specific thing, so we can put Heavy Flamers on them, which is a laugh. If you drop it out and out pops 2 squads of Devastators, each squad with 4 Heavy Flamers and a Combi Flamer in it. Hilarity
even better, just go twin hand flamer. There you go. Push.
It's so swingy because they're all D6 shots, so you could jump them all out and hit 5 times.
Yeah,
it's not likely to happen, but it could happen.
That's the thing with flamers.
So I almost think they're almost a meme unit now. especially without that strap, meaning we can't get rid of the move and shoot penalty.
But you
I
can
really
still
don't think they're
do an action and
competitive.
shoot. There is still that strat that exists.
You could for 2 CP.
Yeah, pop these
If
guys
you've got
out.
4 las cannons in there, it's probably worth it.
Have them raise a banner and shoot 5 heavy flamers. There you go. That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate them as much as I hate the Centurions. I'm not entirely sure that I feel there's a huge amount of, like, I think there's other chapters that can do this, again, the shooting better than us. So yeah, I mean, I think the play to make with the Devastators probably is to have them in the drop pod, right? Like 9th edition, like you said, you're not generally being immobile. The map's smaller. You want to be moving around. So
there's an argument to say that I did try out theory crafting a build where you had 4 Devastators with heavy flamers, the sergeant with a combi flamer, a lieutenant with a combi flamer for re-rolling to wound, bung them all in a razorback.
Yeah, and I did think about running a 10-man squad of Devastators and then something to give them obsec, and then parking it on an objective and saying, "Come charge me with all my flamers." But we're trying really hard to make a unit work.
It's finding a place for the unit rather than fitting them into the army more than anything else.
You know, we're trying to make it work because we want to make the unit work, not because the unit's good. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the unit's bad either, right?
No,
like any unit that can run, what did we say, 10 multi-melta shots per turn? I mean, that's not bad. So, even with the -1 to hit, I mean, if you've got someone around there to give you like chapter master rerolls, they almost negate that -1 to hit, right?
Gotcha.
So, based on that, like, I guess the Devastator Squad for me is a B. What about you, Mark?
I'd definitely put them in C tier. There are uses for them. They just don't fit in with the Blood Angels playstyle as I see it.
And yourself, Tony?
It's another C from me. Again, like Mark says, they can be a good unit, and in some chapters they are a good unit. But for us, not really, I don't think.
All right, 2 against 1. You guys win. We'll go for C. Cool, let's move on then. Eliminators, which I guess are a little bit interesting in that they were recently buffed in terms of their buff. I guess was that they went down like 20% in points cost.
Substantially, yeah.
They were 90 points for 3. They're now 75 for 3. I believe the Las Fusils went down 5 points as well. So rather than 10 points per Las Fusil, it's now 5. And personally, I actually literally kind of like the Las Fusil because I always complain that so many of our Las guns are swingy. Well, this is a Las gun that's just a flat 3 damage. So yeah, why don't we change it up? And Tony, why don't you jump in on Eliminators first?
I ran them a lot in 8th, and I quite liked them because I used to have the ability to ignore line of sight, which didn't make any sense, but it was awesome.
Yeah.
Because I play a lot of guard in my meta, and it's just funny. Wherever you hide your company commanders, I'm going to kill him. But you can't do that anymore, so I hadn't run them. But with the points drop, I mean, it's a standard Phobos sort of profile. So actually, surprisingly good in combat for us because I've got that 2 attacks base. Las Fusils, not a big fan. The thing that kills the Las Fusil for me is the fact it's strength 8. If it was strength 9, I'd be a lot more into it because that would mean that you're able to wound all the tanks and that, all your Mortarians on a 3. Being strength 8, it means that the heavier vehicles you're only wounding on a 4. You're only getting 1 shot from that, and you do have to pay those extra points. So I don't think I'd bother with a Las Fusil, but I do quite like the Bolt Sniper Rifle. Now, running a couple of squads together means you can pop most lighter characters, so things like Apothecaries, which are pretty common at the moment, Librarians.
Anything without an invul save.
Yeah, anything without an invul save. 2 squads of them will relatively reliably deal with. And at 75 points a squad, you can even use them as speed bumps. I'm thinking maybe a couple of squads, stick them in the midfield just to be in the way, because with a 2+ saving cover, they're going to be annoying to shift. You can even transhuman them if you're feeling annoying and smoke screen them. They've got to be dealt with before you could push past. If you're fighting a combat army, now it's a speed bump. And if you're fighting a shooting army, you could even charge it into the back or something they're not expecting it to, and expect them to do a bit of damage. Move, shoot, move. That's quite nice. and it does actually allow you to cover a lot of ground. So if you want to run them into a table quarter for chasing down your servo skulls or whatever, you can do that relatively quickly. It doesn't sound a lot, but that's a 12-inch move on that unit. Yeah, I really like them now. I didn't, but with that points drop, they've suddenly jumped right up there for me.
Cool. Okay. I think I like them as well, actually, with the points drop. I am considering trying to fit them in, like, a squad of them into my list. I do think 2 squads is optimal, though, right? In terms of, like, because they just have that one shot, you don't really have the weight of fire to negate bad dice rolls with 1 squad, right? So I guess that's why some people see much better value in running 2 squads of them. They're obviously quite cool. I guess it's a tough one. Mark, have you got anything to add on Eliminators?
Yeah, so I bought a unit of these recently. I'm thinking of how best to use them. You've got 3 basic roles for them, and role number 1 is use them as pure snipers and support fire. Role number 2 is give them the loud fusils and let them take out chunkier targets, because, yeah, you're right, that damage 3 is very tasty. Strength 8, you don't get much with the higher strength than that with shots, so yeah, okay, it wounds toughness 8 stuff on 4s, but you just pick your targets, really. The third one is, which is what I'm planning on using them for, is take 2 of the bolt sniper rifles and 1 with the instigator carbine for the move, shoot, move thing that Tony mentioned, and use them to cover and perform actions, and then move, or to spread out amongst areas, or to guerrilla tactics in and out of places and annoy people, because, like you said, they could be really survivable with transhuman, with smokescreen, with the extra bonus they get from their camo cloaks to the save, and 75 points for the 3 of them. That's, barring company veterans, that's one of the cheapest units of infantry that we can have running around doing actions, scoring objectives, and winning us points. So for that alone, they've got really good value in my eyes.
Yeah, that's very true. Comboed with concealed positions as well means that you can pretty much, you can start on objectives, you can start on board quadrants, whatever you want to do. Yeah, and obviously, I'm not seeing smokescreen on this, but maybe this is missing the keyword.
No, I might be wrong.
You're right. There's no smokescreen on them at all.
Okay, but they still have transhuman, and they still have full boss. So I mean, I guess, like you said, you've got the mobility that's granted from that, and generally the benefit of being in cover with them is huge. They're so difficult to shift. Unless you're willing to shoot them with stuff like multi-meltas, and if the enemy is going to be shooting their multi-meltas, as you say, against your cheapest points unit, you probably take that trade all day long, right?
And if you want to look at it another way, if you're carrying the instigator bolt carbine, you do the move, shoot, move, you can then charge something, and it's still 3 Primaris Blood Angels. Yeah, they're not going to have any AP, but they're going to hit something, yeah.
You've got a lot of... turn 3, you've got a little bit of AP.
Yeah, and you've got, by my calculations here, 13 attacks for 3 men? That's okay.
It's not bad, is it, for 75 points?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not bad at all. So, okay, and I mean...
I think they're a pretty good unit now.
Yeah, so I'm guessing... I think maybe I'm putting them in A. What about you, Mark?
Somewhere between A and B. I'm not sure which. If I'd have gone out of my way to think, right, I'm putting them on my army now, I'd say A. But I haven't yet quite figured out what I want to take out to replace them with. So for now, I'm going to err on the side of B.
Okay. And what about you, Tony?
I'm sticking them in A at the moment. Especially running 2 units. I think 1 unit on its own is just a speed bump, really. I mean, Las Fusils means you might be able to do something against Death Guard and stuff like that. But 2 units together, the ability to take out a support character, which are so big at the moment, especially all the sisters and that running around.
Oh, yeah, sisters, Admech, Chikari, all of that.
Yeah, they're all... I think that's going to be pretty invaluable. So, yeah, they're an A tier for me.
Just a quick question then before you move on. Do you think that 2 squads of them is better than 1 squad with the Phobos captain? Because the Phobos captain is pretty interesting around them, letting them reroll their ones.
You've reminded me of something there. This would be my premier choice if I was going to take a unit and put Quake Bolts on him, being an infantry that isn't a character with a ballistic skill of 2+. Putting a Quake Bolt on the Sergeant for it would be my straightaway choice.
Especially with his bolt carbine.
Yeah, and the link came from that was because if I'm going to buff it, I'm not going to buff it with the Phobos Captain. I'll buff it with the Phobos Lieutenant. They're already hitting on 2s. I want to buff their wound rolls rather than their hit rolls.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I like the Phobos Captain, but I almost see him as a one-off thing. I mean, we'll get into that when we do the HQs, but I see him as almost a lone wolf, kind of like a Vindicator, but better. I don't really see him supporting these guys. You know, the fact that you can get him up to like damage 4, can't you? You can get him up to means that what's he going to do? I mean, if you've got one squad of these, you're going to do maybe a couple of wounds, so you only need to do 2 more wounds to kill your target. You don't want to do 6 damage to your target. So I don't think he synergizes all that well. He's better off going for something on his own, and these guys dealing for something on their own as well.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, some good information there. Next up, we come to Eradicators, and I guess Eradicators, we're going to bundle both, I guess, heavy melter rifles, multi-melter rifles, and the salt. I think it's just called melter rifles, the salt ones. Yeah. I guess they're going to all bundle together, and I've played a bunch of these guys recently, and I did have 2 squads of heavy melter rifles in my army, and if the enemy is going to come to you, it's really hard to argue with those heavy melter rifles. Like, the 4 damage and half range is absolutely disgusting. However, I don't think... I obviously dropped the heavy melter rifles just last week or something. I don't think they synergize with Blood Angels. They're too immobile. 5-inch move is really rough, I guess, in terms of like trying to get them where they need to be. And like I said, in some matchups it's going to be brilliant, but in some matchups not so great. So I think the options here really are the melter rifles and maybe with a multi-melter in there. And I guess if we start with you, Mark, what do you think about Eradicators?
I've seen some math hammer that says that taking them with heavy melter rifles will, on average, do the same or more damage than the melter rifles, which are assault. So that may or may not be a thing. Likewise, taking the multi-melter will always do more damage if you're prepared to pay the points for them. So that's the thing. They are dirt cheap. They kick out a huge amount of damage. They're infantry, so again, they're Blood Angels. They won't be complete wuss bags in a fight. They're Gravis. They're tough. If you want to support the central push with them, they could be very tasty. All in all, they're very potent in and of themselves, if we're reviewing in a vacuum, as we said. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, and Tony, you want to jump in?
Math Hammer says that they have the most damage output, and you can't really argue with that. Even with the heavy melter rifle, even moving, so you get a -1 to hit, like Mark says, they still out-damage the melter rifle. The benefit of the melter rifle over it, of course, you can advance and still shoot, which you can't do with the heavy melter rifle.
But if you do that, then you can't shoot twice if you advance.
You can't shoot twice, so you do lose that total obliteration. But that's an option you've still got.
Yeah.
If you need to advance to get onto an objective, you can do that and still do some damage output, which you can't with the others. They're too slow, and they cost a lot of points. I know for the points they're really, really good, but stick the heavy melter rifles on. That's an extra that's an extra 10 points or so for a little squad. Stick your multi-melter on to optimize your damage output. Yes, it's core, so you can get a lot of damage. You can fire it twice, but then everything stays slightly further away because it's only got 24-inch range and a 5-inch move.
Yeah.
You can bring them on from reserves. Yeah, that's reasonable, but
they're coming on from the edges of the board, and
they're coming from the edges of the board, and the
they can
opponent knows that, so they're going to go, well, I'm going to sit right here. If the enemy's coming to you, like you say, John, then they can be really, really powerful. But if they're not, and you've got to walk them across, then you've got a bit of a problem. I think they're a great unit, but maybe not for Blood Angels.
If we've got slow-moving infantry and we want to take and hold something, then we want to play to our strengths, which is melee, and these guys don't do melee.
Yeah, I think you guys summed it up pretty well. Like, they do a lot of damage. It's just their slowness that's the one real issue with them. So I guess based on that, I guess we can probably think about ranking them somewhere. And I don't dislike them, I guess, personally. Like, they do a lot of damage. They are cheap. If you can't afford attack bikes in your army, then maybe the regular just melter rifle ones where you can move these guys in advance.
They are solidly, inarguably good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm leaning, I don't know, I think it's an A or a B for me. Like, I can't I can't fault them based on their points cost as it currently stands, but I don't run them personally.
I quite like the normal melter rifles. I think they're quite... With the normal melter rifles, you save yourself a little bit of points, and they don't really do the job much worse than the heavy melter rifles.
Yeah. 2 extra damage is a lot, but
2 extra damage is a lot. But if you've shot it 6 times with a melter
targets?
rifle,
yeah,
you know, things that survive 6 melter rifle shots, is 6 heavy melter rifle shots going to have killed it? Maybe.
Yeah.
If it's Mortarian, I don't know. But they don't kill Morty in a round of shooting. So, yeah, what's the point? Stick them in a B. Doesn't kill Morty.
I was going to say B for bin. Mark, where do you rate them?
Yeah, I'd agree with B. They are good, solid units, but I'm not actually thinking of taking them on my list at the moment, which normally I'd place in C, but these are definitively good units, so there's definitely a space for them in the right place, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, if you got them in one of your Indomitus boxes, and they fill a role in your army.
They're really nice models as well, aren't they? I've really enjoyed painting mine.
The Gravis models are generally just really nice, I think. Maybe it's just the big chunkiness of them. I enjoyed painting all my Gravis units. Okay, let's move on then to the Fire Strike turret, and I'm going to have to refresh myself on the points for the Fire Strike turret, but there is 2 variants of it. And last time I checked, the Las Cannon is ridiculously expensive at 130 points.
Yeah.
And so the real option, I guess, is the autocannon. I think it's a twin autocannon coming in at 90 points.
Yeah.
Now, the Fire Strike is very, very, very slow. So, Mark, why don't you jump in on the Fire Strike first?
So I saw this and I thought, seriously? What the fuck, G-Dub? What are you thinking? You got these 3-inch turrets and they're not moving very far in a terrain-heavy meta where people want to move and get on objectives. So, yeah, okay. I mean, you want to round out the sort of Primaris fire base and what their units can do, which is fair enough. What they do quite well. I really wanted to like them when Raider Spam came along because their guns seemed perfectly positioned to take out Raider Spam with a lot of gunfire, 2 damage, strength 7. But even then, I think the Raiders might just too mobile. No, I don't see much value in these. I really don't see the point in the Las Talons. Again, that damage D6 doesn't help them. It's mitigated a little bit with 4 shots. They got 2 ballistic skill natives, so that's not bad.
The range on the Las Talon is tragic, though. 24 inches.
You think that, but that'll cover most of a board these days, unless you position them right on your back line.
Sure. I mean, with a 3-inch move, though, it's pretty easy to kite them, I guess.
Oh, hang on. You've got loose for pattern engines linked on there with it.
I noticed that. So you could move 3 inches and then advance 6. So that's a 9-inch move, that.
Wow.
You're not going to be shooting, but you can do it.
Yeah, they're not that survivable, though, right? It's basically just a Gravis Marine, or a Tech Marine, I guess. Toughness 5, 2+ save. Again, 90 points for one of these.
If I was going to take them, I'd take the autocannon. I agree with you. I wouldn't touch the Las Cannon with a 10-foot... Sorry, the Las Talon one with a 10-foot barge pole.
Yeah, I mean, I actually bought one of these on release day, more full me, because I thought it looked cool, and I've undercoated it and I've put it in a drawer, and it's still in the drawer, not moved since release day, which was probably last year, actually. So, based on that, I'm probably personally thinking it's about a C. With the, I would say C with autocannons, D with the Las Talons, but do you want to jump in here, Tony, and give your opinion?
Why is the Las Talon so expensive? That's what really does it for me. It's just so expensive. I mean,
it's strength 9, I think, that's got to do it.
Maybe, but I don't know. I want to like them just because I think the model's quite fun, but I think it's a bit rubbish, to be honest. 5 wounds is quite nice, I suppose, because that doesn't line up very nicely with any kind of damage anything weapons.
Yeah. 2-up armor save.
2-up armor save, so they're relatively tough, but they're also 90 points, so they're not relatively tough for a 90-point model. If it was 50 points, then I'd be thinking, yeah, I'll take these all day. 90 points with that twin Las Talon, yeah, I'd take that. I wouldn't take the Las Talon. I'll take it at 50 points with the Accelerator autocannons, but yeah, they're just too expensive. I do like the Accelerator Autocannon. 6 shots is quite nice, but not 90 points nice. I think they're just way too expensive to be viable.
Yeah. So, are we on a D with these guys just because they're too expensive?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be the dog shit awful tier.
Do you agree with that, Mark, or where are you putting it?
I'd love to find a reason to argue otherwise, but I can't see a single reason to take them.
All right, it's a D. We might hit a few Ds tonight, I guess.
I mean,
heavy support is not our strong point.
If it was any other army, it wouldn't be quite so bad. But Blood Angels are not your heavy-friendly army, really, are they?
I suppose not. Next up, we've got the Gladiator Lancer, and we've got a lovely Ultramarines one here because I don't think many Blood Angels players have even considered painting a Gladiator Lancer, or building one. And let me just pull up the Lancer's profile. And I think these points you'll be seeing on screen are slightly wrong because they lowered the points cost, right?
Points on there. So it's currently the Gladiator Lancer sitting at 180 points.
Yep.
For a toughness 8, 12 wound model with just a 3-up save. And you actually have to pay 5 more points to get access to smokescreen. Like, what? Why? I mean, I hate the fact that a lot of the armor in 9th edition, like the change, I think the change to Meltaguns, giving them 2 shots, was so drastic that it put so many more Meltas into the meta.
Yeah.
I think it needed to happen though. It always annoyed me that the multi-melter had twice as many barrels as the melter gun, but had twice as much range. And that never made any sense to me. I've been playing this for a long time now, and I remember sitting there in 3rd edition going, "Why has it got 2 barrels?"
But I think what it's done is it's made a lot of armor. Maybe not dreadnoughts. Dreadnoughts are very, very strong because of Duty Eternal, but a lot of other armor has suffered from that change, I think.
Or anything with an invul save.
Very true, yeah. So typically most of these Space Marine tanks do not have invuln saves, so they just melt if they get hit with rounds of multi-meltas. And I guess this is one of the tanks that got introduced, I guess, pretty recently. It's got a Lancer Laser Destroyer, which is a heavy 2, strength 10, -3, D3 +3, so that is nice. And you also get to add 1 to its attack roll, so that weapon hits on 2s. And then a couple of Stormbolters. And you can add a Rocket Pod or a Stubber or these sort of standard Primaris little weapons you can add to a tank. But for me, I like the look of the model, but I just don't think I have any interest in it. I don't think toughness 8 with wounds 12 for 180 points is survivable. Mark, do you want to jump in?
So the role you're going to be using this in, if you take it, is you're going to make most of it 72-inch range, strength 10, 3 damage shots, D3 +3 damage shots. The main gun is not shit. It's not bad at all. You want to sit it right at the back of your field or in a corner. 10-inch move means it can be relatively mobile to get a line of sight where it needs to be. And it can shoot stuff with a 2-up to hit with relative impunity. The question is, do you want to pay 180 points for the ability to do that? And 180 points for
2 shots. I mean,
2 shots.
You're probably going to hit on both, I'd say, and then you're probably going to be wounding on 2s or 3s. So
on most things,
yeah.
I mean, the firepower is relatively reliable. I think it's just a touch too expensive, just a touch.
Yeah. All right, and Tony, what do you think?
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say this is my favourite of the 3 Gladiator tanks. We haven't looked at the other 2 yet. But I'd say this is my favourite because it's the cheapest. It's the cheapest at 180 points. I think it's still a little bit overcosted. I don't think that toughness 8 is that bad against Melter, or quite as bad as we think it is. Because remember that Melter's only wounding on a 4.
Unit.
Yeah, Melter's only wounding on a 4. It's a backfield unit, so it's not going to be within half range. So let's say your multi-melter gets in range. It's going to hit, let's say it hits twice, but it's only going to wound once, and you're going to be doing that D6 damage. So D6 damage, average of 4. So it'd probably take 3 multi-melters firing at it to on average kill it. That's not a small amount, so I think it will last a little while. It is still a bit overcosted, but I do quite like that laser destroyer. Partially because it's a cool name, but heavy 2, strength 10. That's not bad. That's going to do some denting things. D3 plus 3. That's going to be pretty nice for killing things like battle suits and things like that.
Yeah.
Sort of mid-wound things.
If I was going to support Blood Angels at range with anything, it'd either be indirect fire or it'd be something like this.
Yeah. So I don't think it's shit, but it's not really for us. But at the same time, it's not got core either, which I think is a downside. But it does mean that it doesn't really synergize outrageously well with anybody either. Which might be a downside of the tank, really.
It means that nothing needs to hang back to buff it, I suppose.
Yeah, so it can run on its own. Yeah, I think the recent points drop was a pretty hefty one, and it's definitely helped it. I wouldn't bother with any of the upgrades.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you take Smokescreen in case someone's going to try and reserve in some multi-meltas to kill it. But yeah, I guess, as you say, if it's going to hang back and shoot its laser destroyer over the course of a battle, if it's undisturbed, it's going to do damage, And yeah, I tend to agree that it is nice to have a big cannon that's just going to shoot out a number of shots long range, and maybe the reason I think it's not survivable is because I'm thinking of the Gladiator Reaper, which we're going to come to in a minute or two. But I mean, I guess you guys tell me where you think this lands. Why don't we start with Mark, and then we'll see.
Somewhere between B and C. I would have normally erred on C, but talking about it here with you guys has kind of made me think about it a little more. So definitely somewhere between them. I'm not convinced which way yet, though. B or C?
Tony?
I'm pretty much the same, actually. When they come out, I just thought they were rubbish. But the recent points dropping it down to 180 points. Yeah, it's the same as, I know we're not directly comparing, but it's the same as kind of Redemptor Dreadnought without its rocket pod. It's going to have probably a slightly more damage output for slightly less survivability without its -1. So that doesn't seem outrageously bad, to be honest. It's not great for us because it doesn't have any close combat and we want to be able to punch people in the face. But it's not rubbish. So I'm going to go with Mark. I'm going to say it's BC, probably, if I'm honest, for us, leaning a bit more towards the C than the B.
I think I'm going to say B. And the reason, while I've been speaking to you guys, one thing I was thinking about is we talk about there's a lot of Eliminators and Gravis in this meta. If you think about shooting your heavy laser destroyer, whatever the name of it was, at a Gravis Marine, and you just shoot at enemy Eliminators every turn, you're going to hit them on 2s, you're going to wound them on 2s, they're only going to save on 6s, and every failed save is going to kill one because it's D3 minimum. Yeah. So actually, anti-Gravis, this thing is actually going to be pretty decent.
You know what else this would be quality for killing as well?
Sisters Rhinos.
Death Shroud Terminators.
Yeah.
Because they've got 3 wounds, haven't they? So they get their -1, but we always do a minimum of 4.
4 damage, yeah. So I think this maybe moves into B, and that's, if we think about it, over the course of the game, if you get line of sight on either Death Shroud or Blight Lords, 6.5 dozen really, you could just be killing a couple of Terminators every turn. They're 40 or 50 points per model. That's actually not bad at all when you think of it that way. And you push them onto their invulnerable save, and if you ever have a Psyker that gets in range, then you can make it even harder for them to save. So, yeah, the 4 damage minimum is actually pretty good. I really rate the Redemptor for his fist because it's 4 damage minimum, and I guess this is what this gun is, So let's say the Lancer it's probably somewhere like this, but I don't think I can put things between columns. So we'll put it...
it's probably the bottom end of B, isn't it?
Yeah, that's probably a fair assessment. All right, next up we have the Reaper, and this is the one that maybe I was worried about because to me this felt like it was 2021's version of the Baal Predator, right?
They even painted it in Blood Angel colours, didn't they?
They did. They really just stuck the middle finger up at the Baal Predator, didn't they? They were like, "Yeah, we know that you're bad. We're going to sell a new Primaris tank." And basically, it's just going to have very similar guns. if you think of the Baal Predator with its twin assault cannon, you now have a twin Gatling onslaught cannon. So heavy 24. So basically double the shots of the assault cannon from the Baal Predator, and then the bolters at the side, both rapid fire 4. Tanks don't get
a lot of DACA, hasn't it?
Yes,
it's 210 points.
And tanks don't get full bolter discipline, so you need to be within 15 inches to get your maximum rapid fire shots here. Is that correct? I always forget bolter discipline. They changed it, and I know they changed it for dreadnoughts. And Terminators get bolter discipline now, and I don't think armor gets it. This is how little I run armor, I guess.
I have no idea.
I don't think it does.
Yeah, I mean, probably none of us run armor with bolt guns on it, typically. But, yeah, so it's the same. Toughness 8, 12 wounds. And 210 points, like you said. Again, you can put smoke launchers, rocket pods, and stubber on it, but the main thing is Tempest Bolter, Strength 4 -1, twin heavy onslaught cannons. So this is very much like a chaff clearing tank, right? Like it's gonna, and the reason that the Baal Predator, when it used to be actually reliable or good, I guess, or
no bolter discipline. Sorry.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. The thing that we always used to love with the Baal Predator is you cleared out all those chaff units and then you made the important charges with your other units. And I guess this tank is trying to do that. So why don't you jump in first, Mark?
Like you, I saw this and I thought this is a middle finger to the Baal Predator, so I'm immediately disinclined to hate it right from the get-go, which is so disappointing because I own at least 3 Baal Predators and they're useless, and then this thing comes along. So, fuck you. Right, on a slightly less biased note.
It's a good job this isn't a family show.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll try and rein that in. Right, we've got 10-inch movement, which is fine. You've got the same defensive line as the other Gladiator, which makes perfect sense. Oh no, this is a 2-up save. This is a 3-up save, not a 2-up save. So, are we still on 2-up, or am I getting mistaken?
They're both 3-ups.
Okay. We got a lot of DACA. All the guns synergize with each other. They're all at the same sort of range. They can put out a lot of firepower to try and clear some screens nearby. That's a lot of points. 210 points for this.
Yeah, so if you're within 15 inches, you get 16 Strength 4 -1 shots and 24 Strength 6 -1 shots. So, I mean, that's 40 shots. I guess if you were up against a Sisters list, that would be 40 shots that you would be wounding on 3s at -1.
So, 2s with the big gun.
Oh, 2s with the big gun, yeah, good point.
And same against Dukari or Eldar or Guard.
I guess ultimately, I generally don't look at tanks unless they fulfill a specific purpose, because all of the buffs and synergies and bonuses we get as Blood Angels are melee focused and infantry focused. And so in order for me to pay points to bring it into Blood Angels army, it's got to really do something that I can't get anywhere else to lack those buffs and that synergies. And this kind of does that. It's a lot of firepower.
Yeah, see, I know we're looking in isolation, but let's just talk for 1 second then about Inceptors, right? Because if you brought Inceptors at the moment with their Strength 5 -1, 1 damage bolters, 3 of them are 120 points and they get 18 shots. So if you doubled that up to like 240 points, you would get 36 shots. So this is actually bringing a little bit more for the points, for the raw points cost. You're getting a little bit more firepower here than
more resilience as well. It'll be harder to take down than the Inceptors will be.
Maybe. I don't know, actually, on that one. 6 Inceptors, Gravis armor. There's a lot of wounds
toughness
there.
5.
They are toughness 5, but this is only toughness... It's toughness 8, isn't it? Yeah. So maybe... I think it's probably fairly comparable, to be honest, durability. The difference is, though, that the Inceptors are going to take a big hit to their damage output as they get wounded, whereas this one, all right, you can profile it, but... shoots 24 times.
They're actually pretty similar when you think about it like that, you know? Being profiled is going to be the same as losing models.
Yeah.
I guess, like, you know, 5 or 6 Inceptors would have 5 more wounds, but they'd have 3 less toughness. So,
and again, being a vehicle lacking core is a point against it. So,
very true. But I actually
think
it
all comes down to that 210 points.
You'll want it.
If it was 180 points, the same as the other one, then I think it'd be a nice little choice in there, because you've got something that's basically they've gone, look at this firstborn tank. Oh, they like those firstborn tanks. Let's turn everything up to 11.
And counter to the other one. The other one you want to stay back and shoot with. This one needs to be right up in the middle and thick of things, at which point the prevalence of multi-melters you were talking about becomes a real issue for this.
Yeah, I think it's too many points.
Yeah,
I think it's too many points to be good.
I think it gets relegated to crap tier because of what you just said. It's a little bit too many points, and there's too many multi-melters within 24 inches. This tank has to be within 15 to get the maximum value, but it actually can do quite a bit of damage if it can get within 15. And I guess there is ways that Blood Angels can get an invulnerable save on a tank. You know, we do have Shield of Sanguinius, we do have other ways to do it, but it is a big investment. So I think whereas the last one we said was maybe like low B, high C, I guess this is maybe low C, unless you wanted to maybe bring Shield of Sanguinius Psyker, and then it would be high C, but I think it's still a C because, you know, the argument says the one turn that you fail your psychic test is the turn that's going to get hit with multi-melters, and that's that.
Solid C.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Yeah, so
I'm liking damage strength 6 weapons at the moment with all the new Sisters and Drakari running around. I think it's given things like your heavy onslaught Gatling cannons a little bit of a boost, and they're a bit better than I thought they were a few months ago, but still not better enough to take it out of C2.
Yeah, when we get to the Baal Predator, I really like to talk about how we think, because it would be really nice if the Baal Predator was actually competitive again, and how we think we could maybe get there.
I think the Baal Predator is better than the Gladiator Reaper.
Okay. Alright, next up is our Gladiator Valiant, and this is the most expensive version, and it is the version that has the multi-meltas on the side, and it has a twin Las Talon on the top. I'm surprised I remember that because I don't run Gladiators, but I think that's right. Yeah, 2 multi-meltas and then the twin Las Talon. I guess the one thing that has to be said straight away is that all the weapons are D6 damage, so there's certainly going to be a bit of a swing here. 230 points. It comes down to the fact that we're all 24 inches as well. So to be in range of our weapons, we need to be in range of the enemy multi-melters as well.
But we've got a movement of 10, so the ability to move from out of range into range and do that is reasonable. It's not bad.
And if you compare it against maybe like a squad of Eradicators, how they get, basically 6 shots, this thing really has 8 shots. I mean, your twin Las Talon really is... It's very similar profile to the multi-melter, right? 1 more strength, 1 less AP, same D6 damage, but no bonus for half range.
So 230 points for 8 really tasty shots, which doesn't rely on you shooting at one target or other and having variability. Doesn't completely suck.
No, but this one is on a BS3, unlike the other main cannon that had the BS2.
Yeah, true.
And it isn't core, again, a little...
And you need to be close and it's not core, and
I don't like the fact you have to...
Yeah. What's it for?
I guess it's an anti-armor tank, but at the same time, I don't really see why the Primaris tanks need to pay 5 CP to take... 5 points to take smokescreen as well. I mean, that's just another kick in the teeth, right? You should just have smoke launchers.
If you're shooting at something like Morty or any big monster target with an invul save, you want volume of shots to get past the invul save, unless you're null zoning it or something. And 8 heavy shots, 4 of them will get through the 4-up invul save, at least.
Yeah, it's a lot of points for that.
It is.
So, isn't it? Yeah, we're talking about comparing it to Eradicators. I know we're isolation and the rest of it, but yeah, a squad of Eradicators is 150 points. One of these is 230 points, and it's only got 2 more shots. And it doesn't get all those bonuses to extra damage. I just don't know what it's for. It doesn't feel like an anti-tank platform because it has to get too close. So a lot of the sort of heavy tanks that you're going to be shooting at are going to be wanting to sit back in the backfield and take pot shots at you, and you're going to have to drive right up to them to do it.
Which is pretty Blood Angels, let's face it.
Which is pretty Blood Angels, but then somebody's going to punch it. Or they're going to multi-melter it, or they're going to drop some thing nasty, or Saint Celestine's going to come pull its tracks off, or something like that. Yeah, it's way too many points, and I just think it's too confused for what it's for. It's a short-range anti-tank tank.
If I'm going to be spending points on something going up mid-board to take things out, then I want it to be able to hit things in Blood Angels.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm not the hugest fan of it. When you first see it and you see all the heavy shots, you think great, but when you actually break it down and the amount that are going to wound and hit and where it's going to be in the battlefield, it just... I think it's a C as well. I mean, I don't think it's terrible. We said 8 heavy shots is pretty nice. We can move into range and shoot them, but at that point, does it not just get return fire and it's dead because it's not survivable? And also, there's a lot of points to lose in a single turn. And again, a penalty against it because it doesn't have the core keyword, right? But I mean, maybe there might be a switch from Blood Angels from the priest to the Tech Marine based on the fact that the priest went ridiculously up in points. So
I've switched. Actually,
you switched, yeah.
You lack loyalty.
No, I just never liked it anyway. You know how many dreadnoughts I like running. When we do the Elites episode, I'm going to be frothing at the mouth.
I was speaking to a friend saying that I love how the Sisters Hospitaller is only 50 points, and she can bring back D3 models per turn. So whoever wrote the Sisters book obviously didn't write the Blood Angels book, did they?
Well, theirs are all cheap and shit, or ours are more expensive. So yeah.
But anyway, C. Anyone disagree with C for this?
Bottom end of C, top end of D for me, to be honest. I really don't like it. That's so many points. 230 points. That's ridiculous. So again, if it was knock another 30 points off, call it 200. Now I'm interested. If it was 180, 190, 200, then I'd be thinking these are a reasonable thing that I could see myself taking. But 230 points, I'm never taking that.
I'd like to be charitable. I'd like to put it in C, but I honestly can't see a situation in which I'd take it in my Blood Angels army.
Okay. All right, so I think you guys persuade me. I think it's a D.
It's probably top end of D. It's better than Centurion Devastators.
What a great compliment. Can we even move them around? Yeah, okay. So it can be the top end. So literally at the moment, Centurion, which is worse actually, the Fire Strike turret or the Devastators?
I'd take the turret before I took Devastators.
All right, so at the moment,
as well, so.
Devastators are literally the worst option. Yeah, cool, okay. This makes a fun video. Oh, next up we got Hellblasters. These should be interesting. And I guess the most interesting thing with Hellblasters to me is the Assault version that just got changed in 9th edition, right? They used to just have 2 shots, and now they're 3. So yeah, why don't we kick it off first with you, Mark? How do you feel about how do you feel about Hellblasters in general and/or Assault Hellblasters?
Right from the get-go, in 8th edition when they first came out, I wasn't a massive fan of the Hellblasters. Straight away, the fact that, to counter that, they follow the Horus Heresy principle where every single model in the unit can carry a special weapon, which is cool, including the Sergeant. So you don't have wasted models carrying a bolter and 2 or 3 of them carrying plasma, which always irked me about the Firstborn stuff. The plasma's fairly tasty. The overcharging, it's okay. I just wanted something a bit more resilient to carry the plasma forward on. Initially was my response. Now, you're right, the Assault ones have gotten a bit more interesting. The amount of shots they put out is cool. As Tony said a few times with Strength 6 and 7, the damage that's going to do against things that are currently ruling the meta with Admech and Sisters and Drakari and so forth is very tempting. They're not wuss bags in melee because they're Blood Angels. They therefore have a brick in their back pocket by default of what they're doing. The question is, as always, mobility. They're on foot. So that hampered the Eradicators, and I think it hampers these guys as well. So
yeah, Tony.
Throughout 8th, I didn't like them. Throughout 9th, I didn't like them. But part of that's because I'm really biased against plasma. Because my big problem with it is to get their damage output, you need to overcharge it. Right, my favourite are by far the Assault plasmas. Yeah, 3 shots, that's a lot. Damage 2 when you overcharge them. But if you don't overcharge them, you're only getting damage 1, so you're halving their damage output. And if you do overcharge them, there's a 15
but against some targets, that's good. So against some targets, that's all you need.
It is all you need, but at the same time, I reckon if I rolled 15 shots, I've definitely wiped the squad. All right, statistically you haven't. You're going to get 2 or 3 dead every time you shoot at someone. Is bonkers. Okay, you can try and save them because you can put a captain nearby, but now you've got to have a captain following them around, or Wisdom the Ancients to follow them around. I think the heavy plasma guns are quite nice because you know that damage 3, strength 9s.
There's
really tasty, but you're only getting the 5 shots.
There's lovely tricks you can make with a banner bearer following them round. So each time one dies, you might have a chance to have that guy shoot on death. Then you bring them back with an apothecary, and they come back and shoot again, then die again, then you get a second shot.
You're bringing a lot of points worth of stuff to babysit them, though, now, aren't you?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I don't think they're awful. I think the Assault Plasma Incinerators can do an incredible amount of damage output, like stupid amounts of damage output. There's a little bit of me that wants to run a squad of 10 of them and just laugh. And just annihilate something, but I'd annihilate it and they'd all die on the rolling ones, and then I'd use my captain rerolls to get even more ones.
And then they die to Sister Special Storm Bolters that are damaged.
And then they die to Sister Special Storm Bolters. So I don't think they're useless. I think they've got a lot of damage output. I don't like them because I don't like guns that kill yourself. Yeah, that's really it for me, to be honest. I don't mind the platform. I don't think I want them on something heavier because they'd usually be more expensive and still kill themselves on a 1.
Yeah, do you know the one thing that I asked, because obviously Inceptor's just got fired up in points, and typically I don't run too many transports, but the one thing I did say was, like, you know, that if you did put these guys in an Impulsor, you know, they would be able to disembark and shoot the plasmas.
After the Impulsor had moved, which is good. Which
I thought was pretty tasty with this Assault Plasma. And I mean, I think
stick one of those Primaris captains in there as well.
That's what I was going to say. You can put 6 models in the Impulsor, right? So you can take something to buff them in there as well.
For your rerolls.
So
expensive unit, though, if you're going to do that.
165 points, yeah. But I mean, if you compare that now, 165 points against, let's say, Plasma Inceptors are going to be 180 points. And are they going to average 15 shots all that often now? Because, well, I mean, against squads with 6 or more models, they'll get 18 shots. But anything like minimum size units, they're probably going to average about 10 shots. So these guys, in general, will get more shots than your Plasma Inceptors now. But
they will. But they're less mobile unless you bring a transport, and then they're getting really expensive.
Then they're getting stupidly expensive,
and then you need a captain to look after them, or you need a captain to babysit your Inceptors as well, but you still need someone to babysit them.
Yeah, so...
Expensive unit.
So I personally think that they're probably like a B for me. Like, I can't see myself taking them, but like... they are sort of in my mind, like, hey, I think those Hellblasters could do some work if I wanted to, you know. If you want something to, like, quite a few Blood Angels players will take Assault in Intercessors, you know, just to go to the middle of the board, pump out a lot of shots, hold the middle. If you're going to double down and hold the middle with, like, an Apothecary or something, then I guess the Plasmas are probably just as good, if not better. So, like, I think there's a place for them, but me personally, I'm not running them. What about you, Mark?
They don't suck inherently, but likewise, I'm not running them, and I'm not thinking of running them nor considering a space in my list for them in any way. So they're a straight C for me.
Tony,
they really are between the sort of bloody awful and crap, aren't they? For me, I reckon they're probably a C, but they might be top end of the C because I think with certain builds they could be quite powerful. I just think that, again, they're another one that's probably more powerful for somebody else.
Okay. I think we'll put them above the Reaper. I'm not sure they are stronger than the Devastators. I think they lose something because they kill themselves. You know, like when you need that 2 damage, that's when they're going to kill themselves. So, yeah, I mean, I actually have 10 of these guys painted, which is tragic. I don't never get on the board, but maybe one day. All right, next we're going to move on to the Hunter. And, you know, a firstborn tank that doesn't get a lot of action, I would say, at all. Why don't you start with this one, Tony?
I played a game the other day and I brought 3 of these.
Oh, really? Okay.
What the hell did you do that for?
Well, because my opponent was bringing 2 tail tiger sharks.
Oh, fair enough.
And that's really what it boils down to, isn't it? It's not a very good tank, really. But there's got a couple of things in its favour. The big problem I have with its damage output is that it's only heavy 1, and it's D6 damage. But against aircraft, D6 plus 6, that's quite a lot when people are starting to fly around with the big flyers. They're only 110 points. That's mega cheap. 110 points. Yeah, we were talking about how actually the Gladiator is not all that unsurvivable with its toughness 8 and 14 wounds. Well, this is toughness 8 with 11 wounds and only costs 110 points. So I think it's slightly better than we give it credit for. I think its big problem is the fact that it's only got 1 shot. And if it misses it, then it's completely useless for a turn. But the 1 shot's a good one. Strength 9, even against normal stuff. AP -3, bit swingy on the damage. +2 to shoot aircraft, so things that got jink. This, and I think there's a couple more that we're going to be coming up to in a moment that are all going to fall into the same trap, is actually not that bad if your opponent's bringing aircraft, but nobody brings aircraft except, I suppose, New Admech. They've got some nasty little flyers in there. Strength 9, though, is probably a bit overkill. So until the Thunderhawk gunship meta takes off, I think it's probably down the bottom. But it was hilarious bringing 3 of them the other day.
You know, at least it gets its smoke screen for not having to pay 5 points.
It doesn't have to pay 5 points, is it?
Mark, what do you think of the Hunter?
I think everything Tony said stands for this. I've not got much else to add. If people were bringing aircraft, then it would be my second choice anti-aircraft tank. Nobody's bringing aircraft. I'm not going to bring a tank for an anti-aircraft role against for the chance that I'm going to face 1 army, unless I know that I'm going to do it. So, nah, no place for this. That's not a thing against the tank itself. That's the thing against where the game is.
It just doesn't have a real use at the moment, does it? I really thought my mate actually was bringing a Tau Manta, and that's what I bought the 3 of them for.
How the hell do you own 3 of these?
I don't. It's tabletop.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
I was going to say, so is it a C then, right? Like, it could be situationally good, but for the most part, it's just a bit crap.
I think it's a good tank that doesn't have a home because nobody's bringing flyers.
C? Mark, you agree with that?
I think the fact that nobody's bringing flyers is very solid in 9th edition at the moment, to the point where I have no use for it at all.
Except Admech. They've got those nasty little Archaeocopters.
That's 1 army out of how many?
I know, but they're pretty big on the meta at the moment.
I don't think it changes where a 1-shot tank
No,
lies.
Like I said, it'd be my second choice anti-air tank. So, no, I'll put it in D.
You put it in D. All right, are you happy with it there in C, or you want it moved to D as well, Tony?
No, for me, it's really the bottom end of C until the meta changes, and then suddenly it becomes useful. And I'm waiting for that day when I can field a Thunderhawk gunship because it's top tier. Until that day, it's got to sit down the bottom end of C. It really should be D tier, but in those very occasional times, and sticking it in the way of something at 110 point speed bump, it's quite cheap for a toughness 8 speed bump.
Yeah. I think C then. I think that's fair enough.
Okay.
I think if the meta changes, maybe it can get shifted up to a B, but I think
even if the meta shifts, it's never going to be a B.
Would you spend 300 points on 3 of these just to drive them forward and stick 3 toughness 8 tanks on objectives to piss your opponent off? I'd consider that for a laugh.
Yeah, it was quite a laugh. But unfortunately, there's a better choice for doing that, which we've not quite got to yet.
Yeah,
okay, let's get to the better choice then. So next up, we're going to look at the Land Raider. And I guess Land Raiders have just had a reasonable sized buff, I guess, in that they all came down in points. I don't know off the top of my head. 1 second.
265.
265, down from 285. Mm-hmm. So I guess maybe like
a decent drop.
Just under 10% drop or something like that. So I guess what they dropped is almost enough points to slap a multi-melt on them and keep them at the same cost. I like Land Raiders in terms of like what they transport.
They're so iconic.
Yeah,
They really are.
Really iconic. I love the Mark II-C one from Forge World with the vertically stacked las cannons, because that reminds me of the old Epic Land Raider.
Yeah,
which
and
used to have those vertically stacked. I remember when the Land Raider model got released back in third, and we had a white dwarf dedicated to the Land Raider, like a big double-page spread in it. It was a really cool. It was also £35 at that time for the same kit. So that was a cool time.
Yeah, and I mean the Land Raider is good in terms of a transport, right? Because it, you can get a whole 5-man Terminator squad in there, which is pretty tasty. Especially like if
Centurion squad in there.
Yeah, if you talk about the Centurions, the one problem with the Centurions is that they're so slow and you can't deliver them, then this is one way to get around that.
There's very few transports that have the flexibility of carrying all the different types of infantry that this can.
But it can't take Primaris because obviously there's, the reason behind that.
Yeah, stupid reason.
But yeah, so twin heavy bolter, twin las cannon on both sides. So you get your 4 las cannon shots, you get your 6 heavy bolter shots. You can put on multi-melta, Stormbolter, Hunt, or Killer Missile, and then Toughness 8, 16 wounds, and then obviously Land Raider has that 2+ save. No invulnerable save again, which I guess is a problem against all the Meltas, but at least on a 2+ save you do get a save against Melta-Guns, so you do save on 6s, so there is a chance you can save. And yeah, 16 wounds. So I like Land Raiders in principle. I fielded them a couple of times when they were at 285 points and felt they were just a little bit too much. I haven't fielded them yet again at 265. I do think that if you are going to field them, you probably need either the Tech Marine or the Psychic Fortress, but I don't, for me probably a Land Raider is like a B. Like I think there is Blood Angels armies that it could work in. But I think there may be maybe it's a C. Maybe there are some better Land Raiders we're going to get to. But yeah, I don't dislike it at all. Why don't you jump in first, Mark?
So tactically, it's a transport. If you're taking a tank to just shoot things, you don't want to be paying points for something with the transport capacity as well. So the fact that you've got that, in a competitive setting at least, where you want to make the most of every single point you've got, means you want to make the most of every single feature the tank's got. So you want to be shooting with it, and you want to be transporting models with it. There's no way in hell I'm taking a unit this expensive without an invul save. So I'm going to be buffing it with a Librarian, or I'm going to be having it hang back underneath the Aegis of a Void Shield generator. But we've already established I'm using it as a transport, so hanging back isn't an option. At which point, if I'm buffing it, then I probably want to run multiples for redundancy, so the bubble from the Librarian can shield a number of Land Raiders. And when you got 2 or 3 of these, they become scary targets to look at popping, because they got a lot of wounds and armor and toughness between them, a lot of firepower between them. And I could see a place for that, but then you're looking at dumping, 1,000 points? 3 Land Raiders and a Librarian into them? So that's the core of your army right there. The role of a transport is really as ablative wounds for infantry these days. The speed is less necessary with the size of boards coming down as they have done. So do you really need quite this much resilience for a unit of whatever that's going to go and stand on an objective or do some actions? Or is it a bit of overkill in the amount of resilience that you have? Yeah, it's nice. I don't feel it.
Yeah, a couple of good points there. I think the one thing I forgot to say as well, it does have the machine spirit keyword. So I guess if you are running a few as redundancy, even on 1 wound you can pay 2 CP and operate in full profile for a turn, which isn't bad, I guess, when you've got 4 las cannons and the heavy bolters, and potentially a multi-melt on there as well. What do you think, Tony? How do you feel about Land Raiders right now?
I'm a sucker for nostalgia, and I love Land Raiders. I think they're so cool. But really, I agree with Mark. The real big problem with the Land Raider is it suffers from, it's confused about itself. I said that the Gladiator, all the melter guns, was confused about itself, and the Land Raider takes that to the utmost extreme. It wants to be a transport because it's got a big old transport capacity, and you can carry some interesting things in there. It can be a great set of ablative wounds because you're protecting your Centurions and their expensive unit. But then you drive it right up, they all jump out, they do their charge, and then a grot tags it. And all of a sudden, you're putting your las cannons into grots. It's got the wrong guns for that, so you have to hang it back. And then what's the point in the unless you're going to keep something in there? I don't know what you do. I don't know why you do it. Maybe to hide an expensive unit of Devastators, which are crap for us, at turn 1, in case you haven't got turn 1. Maybe you could use it for that. But yeah, it's the points drop has made it a lot better. A castle around these could be quite nasty. Doesn't have core though, remember. But maybe for somebody else. Anyway, it's not Blood Angels. We're not great at doing that. It's still too many points for what it's doing, and it's just too confused. I want to like it more than I do.
Okay, so where do you put it? Or where do you think it goes?
It's not crap.
It's not.
But I'm not taking it.
No, it's not dog shit awful. But it is a bit crap still. I think it's a C tier. I don't think we can put it into B. It's just
top of C.
Just too many points.
Yeah, top of C.
Okay.
I prefer it to Devastators.
Yeah, me too. So top of C.
I'm more likely to take it than Devastators. I'd agree with that.
Okay, cool. Next up then is our Crusader, and the Crusader, in some ways, feels the more Blood Angel specific one. It's got the bigger capacity. 16 models, I believe, is the capacity on the Crusader. And what is it? It's the Hurricane Bolters and the twin Assault Cannon. That's correct, yes. So same thing goes. It's down. It was 285 points. We're now looking at 265 points. So just really different units. Different guns and space for 6 more infantry, or I guess that equates to 3 more Terminators or 2 more Centurions. So you could very well have a Terminator squad with a captain, or a Centurion squad with a couple of characters, or you could do a decent amount of jump infantry in here. I did actually run a Land Raider for a little while with my Death Company inside, and it was, as you said, ablative wounds for the Death Company. It meant that when the Death Company came out with the Land Raider in turn 2, we were already 10 inches up the board, made that charge very, very safe, I felt like. But that was out of a regular Land Raider. But, I mean, I think that the Crusader is more attractive to Blood Angels. Why don't you jump in first on this one, Tony?
I think this is probably the best choice on the Land Raiders, to be honest. Unlike the standard model, it's not confused about what it is. I remember when this was a Black Templar only model many years ago. I really like it, actually. I wouldn't take the multi-melter. 25 points? No! That's ridiculous. I'm not paying 25 points for a bloody multi-melter on top of this. No, you keep it clean. Stick with your assault cannons, your ridiculous amount of hurricane bolters. You get right up in people's faces. You pile out. You can get a full squad of 5 Centurions in this. Now, 5 Centurions hopping out of this and charging something, that thing is going to die. And then I'll be tempted to charge this in something else. It's so tough. It's going to take a hell of a lot of Overwatch. Just stick it straight in, because all right, you're going to take a penalty to your ballistic skill, but you've got so many shots, you can mow down infantry. You're not at any penalty to be shooting at them. This has also got the assault launchers.
I was just going to say that. I never realised that this had assault launchers, but okay.
Which is nice. So, yeah, I'd be tempted to take this. In fact, I would almost certainly take this, full of something really appalling that people don't want. It's the biggest distraction Carnifex as well. People are going to be terrified watching this trundle towards them.
I'm just doing the math in my head here, and I'm thinking you can actually fit 5 Centurions and a Sanguinary Priest in there. I like that.
Yeah, that's a Death Star, isn't it?
It is, but
none of them have got core, so we don't need to bring any captains or anything.
The problem is your Sanguinary Priest isn't going to be able to buff them into your Assault Doctrine, because you've got to be outside the transport in the command phase to be able to do that.
Well, you can't do it anyway because they're not a core.
To charge anyway.
Oh, yeah, fair.
So you'd have to get them out, sit there, scare the hell out of everybody. Then next turn, you could put them in Assault Doctrine and melt face, basically.
You can charge after disembark, can't you?
Yes.
No, you can't anymore.
Yeah, you can.
You can, 100%.
Oh, only if they've not moved in that turn.
No.
No. How it works is the transport cannot move before you disembark. But you can disembark and charge.
You can disembark and charge.
There's no
you
moving
can't
the tank
move
disembark.
charge.
Yeah.
You can't move and disembark, period. Unless you like an impulsor or something.
Unless you've got the assault vehicle. This has got the assault vehicle, isn't it? No, it doesn't.
No.
Why doesn't it? It's got an assault ramp on the front.
It does have an assault ramp on the front, yeah.
Of all the vehicles that have an assault vehicle role, the one that's designed to ram into things and drop a ramp on them doesn't have that. Who thought of that?
But I mean, at the same time, I guess
for the win.
I play Centurions and they don't get into combat till turn 3 anyway. So this would be a way to get the Centurions forward a bit earlier. If you did take 5 Centurions, then I mean, I don't think you need the Assault Doctrine. That's a ridiculous amount of attacks from the Centurions anyway. So,
it's so many points as well.
Yeah, it would be. You'd be like 330 points for the squad of Centurions or something like that. But I mean,
if I'm going to take a Land Raider, it'll be this one.
It would be this one? Yeah, I think I'm with you as well, just because your friends are going to drop their face when you dump out it doesn't even have to be Sanguinary Priest at that point, just a cheap apothecary.
I don't even know how good it would be. I just want to do it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we all just want to do it. And I actually, when I ran my Land Raider, I actually liked having the Bolter Terminators inside the Land Raider, because I felt like the Bolter Terminators with like power fists could jump out, you could do a decent amount of shooting with them, and then you could charge pretty decently with their power fists, obviously. So
Relic Terminators could be quite a nice choice for that.
Yeah, and sometimes you can run an assault cannon pretty cheaply in the Terminator squad as well. So I'm guessing the Crusader for me is probably I'd say low B then. If the other Land Raider was high C, what do you think, Tony?
Now they've dropped off that 20 points from the cost. Yeah, it's definitely a B for me.
Okay,
I think they could be quite good. I reckon we're going to start seeing them.
Use it as an anchor or a linchpin for the centre of your field, carrying models up towards it. I can think of worse things to do.
I agree, though. I don't think I would put the multi-melt on it and keep it nice and cheap.
25 points!
Forget the points. The fact that the multi-melter doesn't synergize with whatever it does existing in any fashion means you're paying points for stuff that it's not meant to be doing, really.
Yeah. Okay. Number 13 is the Land Raider Redeemer. And I'm going to have to pull the data sheet up for that. It's the 2 Flamestorm cannons, and then the twin assault cannons. So it's kind of similar to the last one in that it's got a 12 infantry capacity. So an even closer range version of the last one, but obviously more swingy because both flamers are going to be heavy D6. And again, just 12 inches on those flamers, so you need to be really, really close in with this one. I guess, how do you rate this compared to the Crusader, Mark?
The heavy D6 looks swingy, but it's also not, because you're removing the randomness from the automatic hit. So I do like Flamestorms or any flamers for removing the fact that you're going to lose a little bit of randomness on the attack roll. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's halfway between the two in terms of transport capacity. It's lacking the anti-armor ability of the regular Land Raider God Killer pattern. Again, I wouldn't put a multi-melter on it. The simple fact that it's got a little bit less transport capacity takes away a little bit of the edge, but even if someone does tag it, the fact that it's got flamers to mess them up is really helpful.
2 damage flamers as well.
Yeah,
and it's nice when you get charged.
I'd consider it or alongside the Crusader, depending on what I wanted to carry. If I only wanted 12 transport capacity, I'd take this. If I wanted more, I'd take the Crusader.
You want to jump in, Tony?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Mark on this. I do like those Flamestorm cannons. Heavy D6 means it could do a lot of damage or it could do not a lot of damage. The points drop again has helped, 265. The damage 2 on these Flamestorms is nice. If you're going to get charged, I'd definitely pay the point for Overwatch on it. It really depends on what I want to transport. I mean, in a vacuum, I'd probably rate the Crusader a little bit higher because it's got that little bit extra transport capacity. I don't think the lack of range on the guns. I mean, the other one's only got a hurricane bolter, so you need to be within 12 to get maximum shots out of it anyway. So I don't really think that's a big deal. I just think the lack of transport capacity is a little bit sad. It's nice to be able to run a unit and a character. 12, yeah, all right, you could do that. You could get your 5 Terminators in there, but you're only getting 4 Centurions.
Well, your 10 Death Company on foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 Death Company with a chaplain or something. I mean, the one thing to say about Centurions is, although I run them, in my list they run with a purpose. They are very slow. I don't know if I could justify, because here's the thing: when there's Centurions charge with 3 of them, you generally wipe whatever you charge into, and then you generally get wiped because people aren't going to sit and ignore Centurions in the middle of the board, So it's like, if you had 5 Centurions, you'd probably still kill what you're trying to kill. So at that point, maybe you've just wasted 100 and some points on those 2 extra Centurions.
It's almost like a meme. It's just sheer intimidation factor. But you're right, it's huge overkill. You don't need to run that.
So does this just sit right next to the Crusader slightly below it at the bottom of B? But depending on what you want to put inside it, like if it's just a Terminator squad, I think there's 6.5 dozen, I guess.
Yeah, it seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, I'd probably put it just a shade below the other one.
Okay, great. What's up next then is our Predator Annihilator. And I think I own about 4 of these, and I think they have been in a box for the entirety of 8th edition and 9th edition, and I mean, maybe we'll see Predator Annihilators again. How do you guys feel about the Annihilator as it stands?
Go on, Tony.
I'll tell you what, I didn't realise it was cheaper than the Predator Destructor till I was doing my research for this. It's only 130 points.
That's fair, though.
It's still too many, to be honest. Toughness 7, 11 wounds, 3+ save. It's not particularly survivable. Toughness 7's important because it means that your melters, which are everywhere, are now wounding on a 3, not a 4. Twin las cannon's not bad. You get into 2 shots, but it's D6 damage, so with the kind of luck that I tend to run, that's I've just hit you, I've wounded you twice, and I've done 2 damage. So I don't think it's really got enough damage output for 130 points. It's not really that survivable. You can put sponsons on it, but they're really expensive. A set of las cannons for the size, another 40 points. Now you're at 170 points.
Yeah, I think
you got 4 las cannon shots, but 170 points. We complained about the other things being too expensive. They're cheaper. So I just think it suffers from being just too overcosted at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. What about you, Mark?
So 170 points for 4 las cannon shots is not the worst thing in the world. Movement 12 to get them where you want to shoot them from is not bad. I think if I want to be taking range support, shooting those las cannons or those long range things, I don't want to be doing stuff that's a random D6 damage these days. Although the 4 shots does help mitigate that a little bit. But then again, as you say, ballistic skill 3 up, toughness 7. We've got better options that will do what this can do these days, which is a shame because this obviously used to be the king of tank, long-ranged, heavy firepower.
Yeah.
But now it's just been sort of like pushed to a side, really, which is a real shame.
I think you're 100% right there. I mean, if we go back to the Lancer just a minute ago that we looked at, it was going to be 10 points more, right? So if you compare, you would have 4 las cannons hitting on 3s compared to the 2 strength 10 heavy laser destroyers hitting on 2s. So arguably at that point, they're very similar.
Platform with longer range.
Longer range, more survivable, and it's got more toughness, it's got more wounds. And
it's got more consistent damage is the most important thing.
Yeah, the consistent damage, the minimum 4 damage is huge. So, I mean, one failed save on that 10-point more model is arguably going to do more damage than multiple failed saves potentially on the Annihilator. It's going to be harder to get those failed saves on the Annihilator as well because it's just got a lower ballistic skill. So, yeah, I think Predator Annihilators, for me, they're kind of dumpster.
It's a victim of its time.
Yeah, which is kind of sad, but I just have no inclination to run a Predator at the moment at all. I don't think it's as bad as Centurions. I'd say it's maybe a little bit better than the Firestrike. Maybe even better than this Lancer as well, because that was horrifically overcosted. But for me, it's definitely D.
I'd run it before I run one of those anti-air tanks.
So you've got it. It's crap, but...
Well, then again, that's 110 points, and this would be 130, 180. Nah, top of D is fine.
Top of D? What about you, Tony? Where are you putting it?
Yeah, It's really down in the dumps, isn't it? It's got to be a D. Top of D, though, yeah.
Okay, top of D, right. And then we have, obviously, next, the Predator Destructor, which is the one that can run the twin autocannon. It has the same option of las cannons on the sponsons, or this time you can put heavy bolters up on the sponsons as well.
I think you could put heavy bolters on the other one as well.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Did I miss that?
You never would.
I don't know why you would, but you could.
I think it's just the one that I used to have in 2nd edition had the heavy bolter. I think it was the heavy bolters and the twin autocannon, right?
No, it's a single autocannon. You're thinking of
the new Sisters one.
No, there used to be a Space Wolves one.
Oh, it's a Predator
Space
autocannon. That's what I'm thinking. So it gets heavy 2d3 shots. Sorry.
It's got I quite like this one. It's not good. Don't get me wrong. It's 140 points, which means it's too expensive. It's more expensive than the Predator Annihilator, but 2d3 shot Predator autocannon with 3 damage.
Is it 3 damage?
Autocannons have only got 2 damage. That's a 2d3 3 damage autocannon on that.
I did not realise that was 3 damage. Did you?
Yeah, I did a bit of maths on it, and it's not actually that bad for killing things like raiders.
I was going to say I've been assuming this whole edition that it was 2 damage. I must have skimmed over that. And
I did as well until I looked into it. I was doing a bit of maths trying to figure out the best way of killing raiders, and this wasn't it. But it wasn't as bad as you might think. It suddenly appeared in my lists of working things out that it was certainly not at the bottom either. Strength 7, AP -1, so you're pushing it onto its because it's a 4+ save.
4 up armor, 5 up invuln. Yeah, that's right.
So it's pushing onto its invuln. So there's no point having any more AP than that. You're wounding it on a 3. You're doing 3 damage with every wound that gets through. It's not too bad. I still think it's too overcosted. Knock another 20 points off of it, and now we're talking. I wouldn't bother with any of the sponsons on it. I'd just keep it absolutely naked. If it was 120 points naked with that autocannon, I'd be thinking, actually, this is a good unit to bring. 140 points, I'm thinking it's a bit too situational, but damage 3 is nice. I think it's better than the Predator Annihilator anyway.
Yeah, okay, I agree with it's better than the Predator Annihilator.
I would not have given it the time of day until Tony's just said what he said. So, yeah, okay. I've got nothing more to add than that. Tony's been exceptionally thorough.
Yeah, I can't believe I missed it. That was 3 damage. Okay, so it's a C then?
Yeah, bottom end of C. Come on, we're not talking about good here. We're just talking about not quite as shit as we thought it was.
Above the AA tank, but below everything else.
All right.
You've really got it in for that AA tank.
It's not a thing about the AA
tank. It's got the biggest Space Marine missile of anything we can have.
Do you know what's special about that missile? It's piloted by a person. Each missile is a human brain.
It's like a cervical missile, isn't it? That's why it gets so much to hit it.
Okay, next up, we're going to talk about the Repulsor, which is... let me just read it because it's been a while. The Repulsor is equipped with a heavy onslaught cannon, the Icarus Iron Hail heavy stubber, another Iron Hail heavy stubber, 2 crack storm grenade launchers, 2 storm bolters, a twin heavy bolter, a Hunter Slayer missile, and auto launchers. Just enough weapons to make you forget one of them every time you want to fire it.
Yeah.
This was my notes just for this tank. I just couldn't believe it. And I was like, and all the little arrows and all the things that you could swap this for this, but then this could be swapped for this one.
And it has a transport capacity.
we always moan that Primaris have got no options, and it's like, well, they took all of the Primaris options and stuck them on this. That's why there's none for anybody else. They got too tired after writing this data sheet.
Someone needs to clip this bit of the stream and just get that one sentence from you and be like, we figured out where all the Primaris options went. They went on to Repulsor.
They've been all spent with options since the start of 8th edition and haven't had any since. Oh, God.
I feel they've invented some of these missiles as well, or some of these weapons just to be contrary. It's like, all right, we can have a hunter-killer missile. No. Primaris, let's make it one better. Hunter-slayer missile. It's exactly the same, but ignores line of sight.
And this tank
is one of them on it.
This tank is everything that is wrong with Primaris because it's got bloody stubbers on it. I mean, what? Who thought giving stubbers to Space Marines was a good idea, for Christ's sake? I mean,
about 300 of them on it as well. it's like we're going to get all the guns. It looks like back in, I remember in 3rd edition, there was a White Dwarf and it had rules in it to make your own vehicles. And you could pretty much do whatever you want. And it works it out and it gave you a points cost, which was slightly overcosted. But it meant that you could have all the guns. And I reckon somebody went back, found those rules, and thought, well, how can we build a tank and put all the guns on it?
Yeah, but at the same time, none of the guns are really any good because, like, the only thing that's actually got more than, like, 1 damage is the heavy bolters, which, I mean, heavy bolters aren't great.
Heavy bolters, yeah.
And the rocket pods, which are D3 shots. So it's like all the other guns, like it's fancy Las Talons, Crackstorm grenade launchers. I mean... yeah, I mean, it's...
Did they invent the Crackstorm just for this tank? Because I don't think I've seen it come up anywhere else.
It might be on I don't know. It might be on one of those speeders, which came out years after this. So they probably did invent it for this. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, like, I mean, that's the one thing that you say when you're playing the game on the tabletop. You're always like, damn, I wish I had more crack grenades at 18 inches.
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's the thing you're longing for.
I don't like anything that I need a checklist before I can field it.
Yes, I agree with that. And looking at the new points costs, it is 295 points. It's toughness 8 and 16 wounds. So it's the same toughness and wounds as the Land Raider, but you only save on 3s as opposed to Land Raider saving on 2s. So when you actually start getting hit with the multi-meltas in this, then you have no save. And that's one thing I really hate. I mean, at least with a Land Raider, you get 16% chance to save. You know, whereas this, it's like, you know, if... You know, you guys know I play Andrew and he always likes to reserve his damn multi-melted Devastators or Retributors or whatever. He's just going to bring them in on the side of the board. He's going to unload everything into my 300-point tank, and I'm not even going to get a save. And I'm just going to pick... Yeah. So, to me, this is unfieldable. Because...
What's it for? Why have you got a 300-point tank with a bazillion different guns, all pointing in different directions? So some of them are pointing backwards.
So outside of a war game, this would have a use because it would be so versatile. It would be a heavily armoured transport for carrying a unit of soldiers into the field and support them, which is great.
And you could shoot the people
except
that were following
in a war game. In a war game, it just does. It tries to do too much.
What's it for? I don't.
You're spending points on the resilience, you're spending points on the variety of guns, you're spending points on the transport. You've got to be moving things forward to carry people again if you're using it as a transport. It's just all the things that were bad about the basic Godhammer, pattern Land Raider dialed up. Yeah. I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to run it a couple of times at the start of 9th edition. I actually ran games where I was running a Land Raider and a Repulsor, and pretty much in turn 1, if it's still alive, it's going to be alive on a couple of wounds. You're going to have to spend the 2 CP to machine spirit it, or it's basically useless. So all you get to do is take one squad of guys, I guess 10 Primaris Marines up the board, and, you know, Assault Intercessors maybe work here, or I guess Death Company Intercessors maybe work here, but for the most part...
would you want to run it if it was 200 points?
It's
probably
too expensive.
I think it's
too confusing. It's too confused, basically.
I think even at 200
Dog
points...
shit awful.
I think Tony's right. Like, I just don't think...
Worse than Devastator Centurions.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of a word that begins with D that describes just how shit it is.
Okay. Words.
It confuses me and it makes my brain hurt. I don't like it.
I like
Even to look at it. What's it doing? It's like it's not symmetrical. So
do you know what's worse is
just looking at it.
It's £55 as well, you know.
It's £55. It's got guns that can only shoot sideways. They're going to broadside something.
Yeah,
and backwards.
Yeah,
and backwards.
A very cool model, I'll tell you. When you build it and you make it, you put all the guns on it. You're like, wow, that's a cool tank. And then when you actually get to play with it, you're like, yeah, okay, that's going back on the shelf. All right, next up, we actually have the Executioner, and the Executioner, I'd say,
it's mildly better.
Is mildly better, yeah, but it's kind of troubled.
It's slightly less confusing, and I think that rates it much higher already.
Yeah, so it's still got a transport
data sheet,
which is mindless for me. Oh, anyway, right, sorry, carry on.
Oh no, you go for it, Mark. Let's start you up on the Executioner. Go for it.
Oh, Christ. Okay, so it's still a transport. It's got bigger guns. Why? Oh, okay, you could carry a small squad unit to sit on an objective with it, but then you're losing the fact that you've got colossally powerful guns with a massive range. So the synergy's just not there in the purpose you want to run it for. At least with the other one, all the guns are relatively close-ish range for a transport. It makes a bit more sense. This one's just no.
Yeah, and 335 points before you start adding weapons to it. I mean, I actually kind of like last edition, it had a rule where it could move half its movement and fire its main cannon twice. I actually thought that kind of made this interesting, but now it's just the main cannon gets a +1 to hit, and for 335 points, I really don't.
It wants to be a range support tank, which is fine, but why give it a transport capacity if it's going to do that? You're wasting points on a feature that you're never going to use.
I don't know why you wouldn't take a Gladiator over this, to be honest. Yeah, the Lancer Gladiator.
You absolutely would.
Trying to look at things in isolation, but it's got almost the same gun. It's got a laser destroyer, not a heavy laser destroyer, but same damage. Same AP. All right, 2 points less strength, but it's not often that strength 12 is going to come in more important than strength 10.
Yeah, very rare.
You got to pay 10 points for that big old gun as well, or you could have the gun that's on a Redemptor for double the cost.
Yeah, so I think we can probably move straight into where we want to place this. I mean,
yeah, below the last one.
I don't think it's quite as bad as the last one. At least I can read the data sheet without being too confused.
It's a little bit less confusing, but it's not good, and it's more expensive. So I think it's still in the D tier.
Oh, definitely.
If somebody bought me one of these, I still wouldn't build it and play it.
Okay. We all know what to get you for Christmas now, but okay. Whereabout in D would you put it, Tony?
I'll put it better than the last one, but still right at the bottom.
Mark?
I'll put it below the last one.
I think it's better than the last one, and it's sad because I actually have the last one. I actually have a Repulsor. I don't have an Executioner, but yeah, okay. Moving on then, we have the Stalker. And this is the other anti-air tank. And it's basically got Icarus Storm Cannon. 5 more points than the other tank. More shots.
2 Icarus Storm Cannons, to be fair to it.
Oh, sorry, 2 Icarus Storm Cannons. Yeah, so, I mean, the Icarus Storm Cannon, for all intensive purposes here, is just auto cannon then, right? But with +1 against aircraft.
If I was going to take an anti-air tank, I'd take this. If aircraft were in the meta and they were important, then I would take this till the cows come home quite happily. But they're not, so I won't.
Yeah, 115 points. I guess 2 autocannons. If we compare that up against the Predator, it's not so bad at all.
For the special rule for the also for the guns as well. They get to fire twice, double the number of shots against aircraft.
Yeah, so I actually think this is kind of one of the best tanks we've looked at today.
It's still a speed bump. It's still 115 points, which makes it quite cheap. It's still toughness 8.
Yeah, toughness 8, 11 wounds. So arguably,
I'd far rather roll 12 times than once if I'm shooting something.
Yeah. So where is this as high up as a B then? I mean, it's better than the Predators, which we had in C, right?
No.
It's better than the Predators we have in C, but I'd say it's. I wouldn't say it was really B tier until the meta changes.
I'd put it C above the other AA tank, but below everything else, because you're only going to take it if aircraft are in there. Otherwise, you're spending points on features you're not going to use. You lose efficiency.
And it'd be rubbish at killing Thunderhawks. Could be wounding on 5s for Thunderhawk meta.
There will never be a Thunderhawk meta, even against
I'm going to bring it. I'm going to bring it in. I would say bringing it back but it was never in there in the first place.
All the bigger, like the I was going to say all the Space Marine stuff is toughness 7 in the air, isn't it?
Except for Thunderhawks.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Now, a lot of them are actually toughness 6, which is quite nice. So,
yeah, do you know what? I think I rate that above the Predator. I mean, like if you think about the Predator, right? That we just looked at, the Predators. It's got 2d3 shots, where this was a flat 3 per gun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a flat 6 shots.
Yeah, so it's a flat 6, and it's
damage
20
2 rather than damage 3, though.
But it's 25 points cheaper, and it's got 1 more toughness.
Yeah, I think it's probably better than the Predator, to be fair.
And then if you do come up against the aircraft, holy shit, it's actually quite good. So I actually think that this maybe is better than the Predator Destructor.
All right, that seems fair. I'll go with that.
No, I'll agree with that. Better than the Predator, not quite as good as the Gladiator Lancer.
All right. Let's move on then. We've got the Thunderfire Cannon, which has been nerfed into the ground.
Deservedly.
Where did you get that picture as well?
Google Images. It's all Google Images. Why is this your model?
No, he's just that he's looking sideways.
I mean, there wasn't very many Blood Angels ones on Google Images.
That's probably indicative to its use, then, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there was a time when Thunderfires were all the rage.
Oh yeah,
and I mean, they do have that one stratagem that you can.
Which is its sole saving grace.
You can make models move at half speed and subtract 2 to their advance and charge, but I mean, typically Blood Angel's armies are mobile enough that we can dictate the pace of the game to a certain extent, so I don't really think it helps. You know, if you look at the Thunderfire now, it's basically 4d3 shot, strength 4, so that is very lackluster, for 5 points less than the Whirlwind. So, like, for me right now, the Thunderfire is just nowhere. Like, is it as bad as...
When Drakari Assault Force meta comes in, it's going to be coming into its own. But until then, it's shit.
The fact that it can make a unit move half speed in an edition which is all about getting your units up onto objectives and contesting and charging stuff is important. I think gives it value.
Okay. I mean, that's fair to say. Yeah, I mean, if you use it right, you know, like, I have an Ultramarines friend who swears by Tremor Shells, I guess. So, I think...
But is it 120 points worth of good?
Yeah. For that, using that on the right unit at the right time, that can turn a critical point.
It can. I mean, in some ways, it's very similar to Suppression Fire, which we're going to get to for the Whirlwind in a minute. So... I think its damage output is probably a D.
It's
right?
irrelevant.
So it's based on the tier is going to be based on the utility of the Tremor Shells. I guess where do you see that landing, Mark?
Bottom of B.
What about you, Tony?
C for me.
C. We've got. Let's put it in bottom.
I can see a tactical use for it. I would like to make space for it in an army. It's just tricky alongside everything else that we can take.
I just think what it does, we can do better elsewhere. It slows things down, but we're much quicker than most things anyway. Or alternatively, the people that are quicker than us, they're all quicker than us. We're looking at Drakari and things like that. You know, we've slowed that unit down, but it's all right. It's got 15 other ones that are quicker.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, for example, Nightbringer is a good model that he counters pretty well. You know, Nightbringer just flies 9 inches. Actually, does he fly? Does it work on things that fly?
No, Tremor Shell doesn't work on anything with a fly keyword.
Okay, so then
it won't work on Morty.
So it won't work on Morty, it won't work on battle suits, it won't work on anything that's floating about. It's just going to work on infantry and how many high speed. I mean, it'd be funny to use it on Death Shroud Terminators that have got sod all move anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
Deathwing it would be good against too, actually, yeah.
But the chances are they've deep struck onto an objective anyway.
Sisters don't have any significant fly things you'd want to use it on?
They haven't got many things that you want to use it anyway. All their assault units are in vehicles.
Yeah, and halving their movement speed is pretty useful.
Can't halve vehicles' movement speed. It only works on... oh, no, you're right, it does. Yeah, Titanic and Fly, so it does work on vehicles.
Yeah.
Okay, I think if you were going to take a Thunderfire, you probably can't take the Whirlwind because you're investing too many points. So, but I think you're right, Mark. I think that the tactical use of this, I say the same thing that I say with the Whirlwind. Like, just forget it does damage, right? It's all about the stratagem. Tactical use of the stratagem could actually be very important if used right. Yeah. So okay. I think it is. I'm swithering. I think it's either low B or C, but we've got quite a lot here in C, so we're going to go with low B. But like, it's kind of in the same place regardless, right? Worse than this Land Raider, and probably slightly better than this one. So, all right, moving on to number 20, and that is our Vindicator. And I mean, a Vindicator is toughness 8. It can get a 2+ save from the shield. Its damage is crazy swingy in that it's D6 shots and it is D6 damage. So it can swing literally from 1 damage to 36 damage. I think it was you, Tony, that ran 3 of these and killed Mortarion in a single turn. So yeah, the swing on it is real. I actually don't dislike it. Toughness 8 with a 2+ save for 140 points, is it? I think it's kind of a distraction Carnifex at that point because people just generally not going to like its strength 10 D6 damage cannon. But
they just can't ignore it, can they? You can't, no matter how swingy it is, you can't ignore people lobbing strength 10 D6 damage, D6 shots all over the board that you can't even efficiently kill with very much.
And you'd always pay 10 points to take the extra save for the shield.
Always, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier about things that could roll, bringing 3 of the stupid anti-air tanks and rolling them up to the middle of the board just to be really annoying. I'd do it with this. And that's why I did do it with this. I brought 3 of them, not because I particularly thought they were going to do an awful lot of damage, but occasionally they did. But most of the time they were just really annoying for my opponents. They just couldn't kill them off. And I just rolled them up. And I stuck... I didn't have them close enough together, so you couldn't multi-charge them. So if they charged one of them, that would fall back, and the other 2 would give it to you in the face. It's got blast as well. And when you start hitting big units with it, then the swinginess starts to disappear.
Very true.
And it's such a cool model as well. With that big old siege. I used to like the old one, but the new one's much cooler.
I think the only thing I dislike about it is if you're shooting big units, then you're not getting as much use out of the high strength, high damage as you are, because it'll be large units of infantry, realistically. And if you're shooting things from which the high strength and high damage will matter, then you're not going to get the most out of the blast keyword. So,
can I make a quick counterpoint to that?
Yeah.
Toughness 5 orcs.
Yeah,
you're wounding them on 2s, and they're in big units.
Yeah, you'd just be deleting them.
Anything less than strength 10 is going to be wounding them on a 3, but you're killing them on 2s. They're not getting an armor save, and you can kill a whole unit.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to invest in a few Vindicators, right? I'm not sure one does the job, but if
but it's going to kill 6 of them, isn't it? Realistically.
Yeah. So I'm guessing, like,
130 points. It's not bad.
Yeah,
I think it's good.
Okay, well, where do you put it, Tony?
For me, it's not. I say it's good. We're not talking about like top end competitive winning army thing here. It's far too swingy for that. But I think they can be very, very useful. We're not very good with heavy support anyways, but I think this is one of our better choices. So I'd put it pretty high up in B. I don't think it's quite an A tier, but it's certainly a good high B.
And
I'll put it above the Land Raiders.
Okay, yeah, well, I think I'm fine with that. I think I like it. You know, the points cost, the toughness 8. Yeah, it can swing, but if you're gonna, I don't think one of them works, because if you get one of them, there's not enough rolls there to weight of fire work out the averages. Yeah. But I think if you have a couple of them, I think you can definitely make Vindicators work. And I think the fact that you killed Mortarion in a single turn in the shooting phase for Blood Angels is just
technically you can do 108 damage in one round of shooting from three of those. It's not going to, but it could.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same as that falchion tank that I take that can do 100, and it never does, but sometimes you get really lucky with the roll and you just take out something really critical, and it's just like, wow, that's a big swing right there.
It scares the hell out of your opponents as well. They get word of the three Vindicators and Mortarion sort of got round after that, and now everyone's terrified that I'm going to bring them, and that was a really stupid list. That was Intercessors and Vindicators.
Should we just put this in S tier and move on?
I mean, we could put the Whirlwind in S tier and move on. I think, again, it's just not about the damage. It's just about the fight last stratagem. Fight last basically anywhere on the board because of the 72 inches. Me, personally, I would put it in S tier. I think that's super valuable.
Yeah. After the changes they've made to fight first and fight last in the recent FAQ, it's even more useful because fight last is arguably better than fight first. It's just so good.
It is. It's top tier, isn't it?
Especially for us.
You're not doing much damage. It does do a little bit of damage, though, doesn't it? Yeah, we keep saying it doesn't do any damage, but 72-inch range, ignore line of sight. On the cheapy gun, 2d6 strength 6 shots. So you're wounding sisters or Drakari and that on 2s. That's going to do a little bit of damage. I probably wouldn't bother with spending the 10 points for the big gun.
No, I actually think that hurts shots. You in terms of your reliability.
I don't think it's...
If you're taking it for suppression fire, then you want as many rolls to hit as possible because you can't risk suppression fire missing.
Yeah, and I mean, that is 100% why you take it. I mean, you're right, it can do a little bit of damage if the targets is there. I did notice against Andrew this week, he did screw me with those Celestiant Sacrosancts, and that he had 20 of them around Morgan Val, and they have the bodyguard rule. So even when I started thinning down the squad, it was like I still can't suppression fire Morgan Val. And I guess, at that point you maybe need a Judicar to counter. I actually don't know. Well, I have some ideas how I would have countered that, but at the time, I guess, not. Sometimes it's very easy to suppression fire the enemy. Sometimes it can be tricky, especially if you have to kill a bunch of chaff around a character or something like that. But if it's easy to do, then, 100% it's S tier.
It really takes away from the Whirlwind either. It's not the Whirlwind's fault.
How does he stop you suppressing Morgan Val?
Special rule which means that irrespective of anything else, you cannot shoot any character models with their character kind of keywords that are within 3 inches.
All right, so it's not like a regular bodyguard that takes hits and translates them into mortal wounds on them. It just stops you from shooting them at all.
You cannot shoot.
Okay.
They are. I really like those Sacrosancts, but it doesn't take anything away from the Whirlwind. It just means that unit's really good.
Yeah, and that unit will not stay at 14 points per model, I would think, because people in the chat on Monday night were asking how those can with basically storm shields and a strength 5, 2 damage, -2 mace be the same point cost as a Space Marine Scout. And I was like, when you compare it like that, it seems pretty unfair.
Res D3 of them as well with the Hospitalia.
Yeah. Anyway, final heavy sport unit, and it's the one that I guess we all love to hate at the moment, and it is our glorious Baal Predator.
And the only reason we hate it is because you all own 3 of these buggers.
Yeah, and we can't field any of them.
Yeah. I remember when they used to be good.
I used to field mine every game.
That could be the strapline for this tank, really, couldn't it?
Yeah.
When they used to be good. Yeah.
I can summarise the big problem with this because...
Go for it.
There's one. I got this in that Christmas Blood Angel box. It was, a couple of years ago?
Oh, yeah.
And I sprayed it, and then it sat here on my desk in its undercoat for the last 2 years, making me feel guilty because I love the model. It's such a cool thing, and I've always liked assault cannons.
Hey, look.
I've no intention of painting it.
I've got you beat. I got one that's half built, and then my motivation ran out.
You see what I mean? It's not a completely useless. I like the the Baal Flamestorm Cannon, which is just a slightly better Flamestorm Cannon.
Yeah,
it's got a little bit better range. That's quite fun.
If they change the turret guns on this from heavy to assault, right there, then you'd start seeing use for it. Because you could synergize the overcharged engines with all of that stuff, and it'd have a use.
Yeah, and also let it fire those heavy flamers as well, so that you can spend another 30 points. Then you've got 150 point tank.
Even if it was just strategy based.
That can drive right up with the Lucifer pattern engines and set fire to something, then it suddenly becomes viable. The Twin Assault Cannon, extra 10 points, heavy 12, that's not bad. But
the fact that all of its abilities and guns just don't work with each other is criminal, really.
Yeah,
and I think
30 points, and it's the same cost as the Annihilator with just the Twin Assault Cannon. But when you start putting the heavy bolters, all of a sudden, another 30 points, so we're looking at 160 point tank.
Yeah, I just don't see how they can... How no one looked at that and thought, like, no one is ever fielding this model. It's sad. Maybe one day... I mean, I used to run it back in the day with the Twin Heavy Bolter and the Twin Assault Cannon, and... I mean, if you look at that loadout, then the Reaper's just doing that a lot better now, I guess.
If there's a more visual...
For admittedly 60 more points.
If there's a more visible victim of GWs wanting to push people into buying Primaris tanks, then I can't think of it.
Yeah, and they even painted that Gladiator red just to annoy us. And, you know, people actually, I think on the Blood Angels Reddit were calling it the Primaris Baal Predator or something, you know.
Yeah. The Baal Gladiator.
I would love to see the Baal Predator return in some sort of capacity. I love the idea of the Flamers being assault, you know, and using its overcharged engines like that. And I think, this suffers like a lot of the stuff in the Blood Angels Codex. I feel like just, you know, it just got reprinted for 9th. No one actually dived into it and looked at the problems with any of it. They just reprinted the Codex and went like, hey, you know, I mean, maybe
with
that's
a couple of exceptions, yeah.
Maybe it's a bit of a victim of being the first Codex in 9th edition, and I guess hopefully that won't happen again to us. But yeah, so okay, where do we think that the Baal Predator lands?
Can we had put one Predator here, the Reaper, just because I really hate the Reaper.
But we just said it's worse than the Reaper. I don't think it's
better than the Reaper. It's probably on a par with it. But I just want to say, you know, screw you, Primaris. You're not.
I guess.
No, it's bad.
Where even is the Reaper? The Reaper we put down in Dunst here, didn't we?
No, the Reaper's here.
Because
no,
it's got. No, it's not.
Oh no, it's not.
The Lancer is.
No, it is the Lancer. That's the Lancer.
What? No, it's not.
No, Lancer is up here.
Oh no, it's red, isn't it?
We like the Lancer.
Right. We can't put it in C. We can't get away with that.
No, it's just not good.
Is it worse than the Annihilator?
No, I don't think it's worse than the Annihilator. Same points, isn't it? Costs the same.
Pretty much.
But the Annihilator gives you the Twin Las Cannon. This gives you the Heavy Flamestorm for that one.
No, I'd say it's worse than the Annihilator.
Okay. I think it.
That makes me so sad seeing that down there.
Yeah.
I think you're right, though. It is. It's absolutely D tier. And it's really with like, tiny semantics of where it fits in it. It's rubbish.
It is.
No matter how we look at it, it's rubbish.
You're not going to take it.
I like it more than the Annihilator because it's a little bit less swingy.
I think it's cooler than the Annihilator, and that's why.
Yeah, and I mean it's our chapter thing, so for that reason alone, it can be top of D. It can sit at the top of the dumpster, just so we've got eyes on it.
Fair enough.
Don't take it; it's rubbish.
No, but it is still better than Centurion Devastators.
It wins points on coolness.
Okay, so that is heavy support, and this is going to be a long ass video because we're now at 1 hour 57 minutes. So if anyone is still
rubbish heavy support choices, we really do. We look at that and we think, oh.
But this would be different for different chapters. This is strictly Blood Angels focused.
Yeah, wait till we get to the leaks and flip it flip that design.
Everything in S, everything in S and A, and just like a couple of things in C and D. Yeah, great.
But okay, if anyone's still watching, thank you for sticking with us so long. I hope you enjoyed the video, and
I was clean shaven at the start of this video.
Well, your green screen stayed up as well. There you go.
Yeah, look at that.
It's a win-win tonight. All right, cool.
Yeah, pleasure as always, gents.
Thanks again for watching. Leave us a comment down below whether or not you enjoyed the video. Tell us if we made any mistakes in the tier list. I really hope to see you guys in the next video. By the blood are we made strong, my brothers. Peace.